Hello and welcome back to this week's episode of The Beth Effect. I am your host, Beth Clifford. I have my notes for this week's episode because I want to talk about something. It has been, I say this every week. I love to come on here and talk about things that have been top of mind. And some weeks that is what's been bothering me. Some weeks it is marriage. Some weeks it's just, fashion, health, and other weeks it's to do with my career. And that's where we're at this week. And it's specific to leadership and not what we do. We talk a lot in leadership about what do we do when we have high turnover? How do we hire talent? How do we retain talent? But one subject that I don't think gets talked about enough, and I have been thinking a lot about recently, is what do we do when our top talent is ready to move on and ready to move up in their career? And what a bittersweet journey that is for a leader, and also how that really exposes when you're faced with that option as a leader. It really exposes the difference between a manager and a leader, because managers try to keep their top tier talent in place. Like, they don't want them to move on. But good leaders recognize that as this bittersweet where they're ready to go and we want to help them and help develop them and make sure that transition is great. But it doesn't mean that it's not hard, and it doesn't mean that you're not left with the aftermath. And so I kind of want to get into it and talk through basically how to recognize the signs amongst your team when they may be ready to move on, how you can help them throughout the transition, and then what to do afterwards. And I actually printed out my notes on this because I've been going back and forth, and I want to make sure that I don't miss anything and keep, you know how I tend to bang on sometimes. So I want to keep my thoughts streamlined. So number one is, how do you recognize when someone is ready for the next chapter? And the biggest piece I want to call out here is, oftentimes with our top talent, they require the least amount of work from us. They're usually the person on your team that calls you the least, that can problem solve on their own. If they are reaching out to you, it's usually just to get approval or to brainstorm. They came up with the solutions on their own. They're usually your most low maintenance employees and top performing employees. Honestly, a leader's dream. And because of that, we can find ourselves spending less time with them. And one thing that I thought of at this point is you want to make sure that you can notice the signs of restlessness in your top talent. But in order to do that, you need to be spending time, and you need to be actually fostering and maintaining that relationship with them. And it's hard because you think of our top customers at a company and how important it is to maintain that relationship even when things are going well. We want to make sure that we are on top of things. We notice signs if they're unhappy. We want to keep them engaged. And yet, oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes we miss that piece with our high performing talent. So a good pause and thought here is, are you treating your top performers like they are as important to you as your top customers? Because that would be a great place to start. And that also makes it a lot easier to recognize the signs that maybe they are ready for the next step. Either they're telling you themselves or you're noticing it in them. And some of the watch out signs are, number one, restlessness in their job. Almost performance is plateauing and they're getting burnt out. The challenge of the job is no longer there as far as understanding how to be good at the job, and it's more about time management or managing the internal minutia of the job, and that can lead to burnout, because sometimes that means that their passion in the role is gone. So if you're starting to notice that about your top performers, there's two questions you should ask yourself. Number one, are they ready to move on to the next role in their career? And then the second question is, are they capable? Are they capable? Do you feel like if they were to move up in the organization today, are they capable of doing it? So, hold on, let me just get rid of my first paper here. One thing I like to ask is oftentimes you can have an employee say I'm ready for the next step, but they don't even know what they want that next step to be. And we do have, yearly check-ins, and most organizations you could be saying, yeah, we do this. We have development plan check-ins. We check in with them at their year-end review. What do you want next? That is good. That is a good practice. But how often are we referring back to that? How often do we say, okay, you told me that you really want to be a manager one day. And I know that, but how often am I checking in on that? Am I checking in once a month? Am I checking in when I'm in the field with them? Am I checking in when there's a solution to have, or maybe behavior in a poor customer situation isn't going well? Like we should have that at the front of our minds as leaders all the time. And sometimes you can have your reps or your teammates that are like, I'm ready for the next step and I don't even know what it is. One of my favorite questions to ask my team is, when you look at your day and the tasks in the day, what are the type of tasks that excite you? If it's training, you have a training coming up, or you have product training or detailing, and that really excites you, maybe that indicates that you really want to go into our training development team, or maybe our education team. If it's business strategy meetings, if it's the consulting piece of the job, maybe that tells me that you want to go more into like the business development strategy, our key accounts. Like, what things on your schedule set you alive? I once had a rep on my team who was actually petrified of talking to people. Like, it was crazy to me that she was in sales. She would physically shake when she would go into appointments, very timid, but was incredible internally with the team as far as putting marketing emails together, promo ideas. Was anytime a teammate had a question on a resource, she would send it to them like this. And I just thought, gosh, this person would be so good on our internal marketing team. And so really understanding what things excite them and what things they dread within their current job helps you kind of develop them towards what their next career step could look like. And then also to help you create a strategy. Maybe there is an open job for them right now, and maybe there isn't. And if there isn't, there are mentors internally that you can help turn them towards. There's a development strategy, because it indicates to your high performers that you're like, hi, I see you. I know, I appreciate what you're contributing, but I know that you're ready for the next step, and let me help you get there. One of my biggest pet peeves in corporate America is when I hear people who are in a leadership position and have people on their team that are expressing that they want to move to the next role, and their manager turns around and says, oh, you're just not ready. Well, what is your job then? If you are a leader and you have people on your team that want to move on to the next role, and you're sat there trying to hold them back by saying they're not ready, then you are telling on yourself that you've not done your job correctly, because leadership and development is part of being a manager. And so getting ahead of that now and recognizing what are the developmental opportunities for your top talent right now, so that you can get them ready. You can get them the right mentors. You can get them in the right rooms, on the right calls, so that when the time is right, they are ready. That is also a huge part of being a leader. Let's see. Let me just check my notes here. Yes. So when the hardest part is when ambition outpaces the opportunities you can offer, right? So they're ready for the next step, but there's not something there. There's so many things that we can work towards here. Support internal mobility if possible, because as bittersweet as it is to lose someone on your team and you having to hire and retrain, and it's hard and it's daunting and it's exhausting, it's so much better to retain that talent within your company than to not develop them, not help them transition to the next step, and then them just getting burnt out and deciding to leave the company and go to the competition, or not the competition, but you lose that talent. And we have seen that. I have seen that over the last decade in my career. I have seen that more times than I care to count, where someone has been desperate for that next step, whether it be a manager level, a director level, a VP level, and they do all the things, they go through all the training classes, and yet they keep getting passed up on for that next opportunity without the radical candid feedback as to why they're being passed up. And we eventually lose that talent, and most of them land at our competition, and most of them get the job titles that they want. And it is a loss for our company. It would have been better for us to have retained that talent in some way. So think about that. I just recently went through this. I have a top performer on my team who has openly expressed for the last year that they have wanted to move abroad and go and experience sales within our organization, but abroad. And when a job opportunity opened up, she wanted to go for it. And there's this internal pang. There's like this feeling of like almost parenthood, where I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is my child, and I've done all this work to like build them up and train them, and they're doing so well. And you know, you really could benefit from like a couple more years where you're at before you go on this next step. But just like parenthood, leadership is the same, where like, yes, it's your job to do as much as you can to get them ready for the outside world, but there is a sweet spot of sending them out too early and they're not quite developed yet. But also it's like, you know, that 30-year-old, that 40-year-old, that 50-year-old still living at home, at some point, it's detrimental to their growth to keep them too. And so that is like the sweet spot of letting them fly and leave the nest and go, and know that it's going to kind of hurt in the short run for you. But recognizing when that person is saying, hey, I have done the work. I have worked really hard. I've done everything asked of me. I've performed. I'm ready for that next opportunity. It is almost a privilege to be a part of it. Okay. Sorry, I just got off on a tangent there. I wrote this little note down. Sorry. One, a good exercise here before we get to segment 2, I would have you sit and just think about when it comes to who's truly happy and fulfilled in their current role and who isn't. And a good exercise I would do is sit down and think about your current team that report to you now. And think of someone offered them the exact same job, so not a promotion, the exact same job as they have with you right now for $10,000 more. Who would take the offer and go? You should know, I know who would, like you should know who would leave your team for the exact same role, not a career development, not for a promotion, but for the exact same role that you have them doing today for more money. Who would leave and why would they leave? And you should know that, because you should know your people, and you should know who would stay, who would go, and what would be their driving force behind that. Okay. The last thing I will say about when you do let your top talent go in this section is that what can be bittersweet is that relationship that you have with them and have developed over the tenure of like working together. Just because you are no longer their boss anymore does not mean that that professional relationship is over. The door can still stay open, and it's amazing that you can now move into a mentor position for them, and a peer, and not just a boss. And how great would it be to be able to keep that going throughout their career? And I can think of people who have been in my corner and really rooted for me and helped me move on. And I still to this day view them as mentors and will go to them. And they're still part of my career, even though I don't report to them anymore. And I am so appreciative of the things that they've taught me and the things they've done for me. So, okay, moving on to segment 2. And this is like letting go of your top talent with grace, which is really hard, like making career transitions a part of your leadership brand. I am telling you right now, I get it. It really is such a bittersweet thing because you are losing someone who performs well for you, who most likely has really good relationships with your customers, who probably plays an integral part of your team and is very low maintenance. So again, it's a hit. No matter how you look at it, it's a hit in the short term for you. But how amazing would it be if you then became a leader known as launching careers? Instead of just being the leader of knowing, you become known as like how to hire the right talent, how to train the right talent, how to perform. It would be creating your legacy and your leadership legacy, because there's always a little bit of ego when it comes to leadership, but there is something very rewarding to build a brand in leadership known as being a launch pad for people's career and for top talent. Creating alumni networks, mentorship, follow through, and long-term relationships. So like, what does it also model for your for your remaining team? If you are part and you're helping other people and you're celebrating them on in their career, you start to create this abundance mindset for your team and not this scarcity mindset. Like, hey, this team can't go anywhere. We have to stay together. We don't succeed unless we stay together, or we'll take this short-term hit. Instead of like, our growth is celebrated and we celebrate each other, and now we all have something to work towards. And now all of a sudden you've got members of your team starting to mimic the behavior of your previous top performers. That is great. Like, that's a win right there. Your own growth as a leader is how you create space for others. So you hire talent and you train talent, and how you've done that before may be different time and time again. You keep learning more and more every time you do that. Most likely you would hire a little bit differently each time you go, because we don't nail it every time. You also will probably train a little bit different. Maybe the market has shifted in the last time since you hired and trained. Maybe you've now seen some huge watch outs, and you would hire and train a little differently. So it also is like, selfishly and inwardly as a leader, it is a great learning opportunity in a way for you to sharpen a skill set too when you get to hire and train again, because I would bet there are little tweaks that you would do. And then the biggest thing is, what are you going to do for your current team to protect the culture that you've built, to help develop them, to create the talk track of, it's not just anyone on the team that gets to move up and gets promoted and progresses their career. It's the top tier talent. So if this is what you want, look at what the last team member was able to achieve to get there. I can get you there too, but it's going to take this path. And it also holds some accountability to your team of, here's what it takes to develop your career. Here's what it takes to really launch your career off into a different trajectory. And if this is what you want, let me help you get there. But it does put some accountability on them. And it also helps to remove some of the entitlement, particularly when it's been a top performer who's done that. Okay, let me just go through my notes as we wrap this up. Really emphasizing that it's your job. If you look at like your job as a leader, it's to have your team hit the revenue goals that you've been asked to do from your company, and then to train and develop your team to do that. But also it's to help develop people to get them where they want to go in their career. And it starts with really understanding them. If you have a top tier talent team member who comes to you and says, I want to get into leadership, and you don't think that they're capable of it, you need to be having those conversations. You need to be helping them either to develop the skill set to get there, or to maybe steer them in a better direction. But it starts with looking at them as an individual. There's a human piece to leadership. There's a selfless piece to leadership. And there's an accountability piece to leadership that we sometimes forget through the process. Your team essentially your team not being able to move forward and upward is a reflection of the leadership and not the team. So as much as we want to train and develop our people and keep them in the exact same place till the end of time, if you have an entire team that doesn't progress, that doesn't advance in their career, it really is a reflection of the leader. And so as hard as it is in the short run, and as gut-wrenching as it is when you have those conversations with your top-tier talent and they're telling you, I'm ready for the next step, I'm ready to move on, and we so badly want to bottle it up and keep things the same, this is a good sign. This means that you're doing the right thing. And as much as you want to prevent it, if you really lean into it, it exposes the selfless leadership, mentorship side of your role and not the micromanaging manager side. Because the truth is, if you have an employee that is ready for the next step and you try and keep them where they are, you are going to lose them anyway, whether it's to a promotion within your company or upward trajectory for their career or to your competition or to another company. So that's it, really. That's all I have for today. I want to recognize that it really is hard to let someone go. It really is. And there's a piece of you that wants to hold on for it forever. And I just want you to hear that I recognize it and it's normal and you wouldn't be human if that weren't the case. But instead of looking at it as, oh gosh, now look what I have to do, and recognize it as like a job well done, and a new opportunity to grow your leadership brand, to sharpen your skill set, and to celebrate someone that I bet has done a really good job for you as well. So I just, as I wrap this up, got my notes down now. As I wrap this up, I want you to think back on your career and think of the people that have really helped you along the way, and how you regard them now and the things that you would say about them and think about them. And then compare that to the people that you feel like tried to hold you back and didn't develop you or help you. And if you are in a leadership position, I would just say to you, be the leader to your team that you wish that you had early on in your career. Be the leader, or maybe you had a great example. Be the leader to others that you wish that you had for you. And it does come back. It's karma. It does come back. It's not the end. You will get through it. And who knows, it actually may end up being a better thing and catapult your team into a better place. To not be scared of growth, to not be scared of change, and to not try and hold back your top tier talent. And that's really it for this week. I do want to thank our sponsors, Elevation Health. Thank you for all you do for keeping me energized and going. Happy on the days where I want to punch a wall in corporate America. I appreciate all you do, Elevation. So thank you so much. And for any behind the scenes, please follow at the Beth Clifford on Instagram or TikTok for the behind the scenes of my life. I will be back next week with a new episode. If you like this message, please share with others, subscribe. We have the full episode on YouTube. I will be back next week, and I will see you then.